And so we continue. Race 3 of the 1000 miles championship, and where we are now just 6 laps away from our next pit window. So I have now excuse me. So I have now completed precisely 50 laps up to this point. And yes, I was through Sandavot by the time I began this, because, well, I really didn't know how else to begin this part of the video, but I have now put the Mini Marcos 5 laps down. So that is now ultimately where the domination continues. I currently lead this race by 4 laps over the Alfa Romeo. I suspect it's going to be a bit more by the time we get further into the race. The Mini Marcos is running in 3rd, precisely 4 laps down. Then in 4th, we've got the Volkswagen Carmen Gear, who is now well behind the Mini Marcos, and is also on the same lap as him, 5 laps down. And then it is the Honda S800, which is currently, I think, 8 laps down if I'm not mistaken. And then at the back of the field we've got the the Fiat 500, very much running at a snail's pace, and is also precisely 9 laps down at this point of the race. And so the Mini Marcos now comes in for another pit stop. I think this is either his 3rd or 4th pit stop of the race, if I am not mistaken. My fuel tank is almost empty, so in a few laps time I basically have to pit. But that's also why I'm trying to make sure that I conserve as much fuel as I can on this set of boots. And one way that can be achieved is by short shifting. Probably short shifted a little too soon there. Although, the common oddity that many people don't seem to understand with Monaco is the fact that while the qualifying session basically is arguably the best qualifying session of the year because of how close the margins are, when it comes down to the race itself, because Monaco is so tight, it is almost impossible to physically make up positions, let alone pass each other, when it comes to just the outright action of the race overall. And I've now put the Fiat 500 10 laps down. So up to this point of the day, I have probably now put the Fiat precisely 10 laps down. So I think the Honda S800 is, I believe, still 8 laps down. And then in 4th is the Volkswagen, which is currently 5 laps down, same as the Mini Marcos. And then behind me, 4 laps down currently, is the Alfa Romeo Giulia, who I am pretty sure at this point has got no real chance of catching me. Also, I have nearly driven 600 miles in this thing now. So I reckon once we're finished at Le Mans, that is when I think we're going to be near enough to 1,000 miles driven. So I still have another 3 laps on this set of boots. I should have enough fuel to make the pit stop because fuel conservation is one of this car's advantages. And although tyre wear may not be so good, I can at least say it is really good when it comes down to a case of, well, just being quick, basically. So 3 laps to go on this stint. This is stint number 4, which I am now on, as I have now driven 600 miles in this thing. Tried to see if I could grab myself a drink of water as I went up the hill, but unfortunately the straight line isn't long enough for me to realistically grab a sip at the moment. I'll probably do it during the next pit stop, knowing me, because, well, for races like these, you have definitely got to stay hydrated. So we still have another 45 laps to go. I can definitely say that it won't be long until these tyres are on their last legs once again. But at this moment in time, I am just holding on to my race lead and making sure that I do manage to keep myself going. So 2 laps to go on this stint, and then once we're done with those 2 laps, we can then move on to our next stint. And we can also refuel the car as well, because that's probably needed. But anyway, we're now up to 602 miles driven. I reckon we've got at least another 390 miles to go. I am trying to make sure that I do keep these stints going for as long as I can, which is partly the reason why I keep doing 14 lap stints in the first place, because the more laps I do on my stints, then the less tyre stops I will have to make. That's pretty much my way of thinking. Even though I will still technically have to make precisely at least 7 pit stops before this is all said and done. I mean, yeah, sure, I am dealing with a lot of understeer at the moment, but I still feel like my car can make it. Because that is how I do. So it looks like these tyres are pretty much going to be on their last legs on this stint. I know it's not really worth it to risk wearing out your tyres here at Monaco too quickly. You won't really benefit from the longer stints. But then again, I try to make sure that my stints are as long as they can possibly go, because I want to make sure that I am, well, just saving up on tyres, basically. So 55 laps are now complete as I head down the bus stop straight, and it looks as though this is going to be my last lap on this stint, because I have gone into the wall at Saint-Devote again. And taking a sip of water whilst understeering up the hill, and not doing a very good job of getting round the Grand Hotel, as I now head down into Casino Square, and now down into Mirabeau. These tyres are pretty much on their last legs. So this is now going to be the 5th pit stop that I will make in this race, as we are less than 2 hours into this bit of the race. I think it will be relieving by the time we're done here, because, yep, I cannot go another lap on these tyres. Yep, I have just got no grip in the front tyres anymore. These tyres are rurally fucked. Or should I say these tyres are urbanly fucked. So through the swimming pool section we go again. And so the Honda pits in for another pit stop. I think I'm now going to put in 9 laps down at some point on this stint. And I am also out of fuel as well, so I'm coming in for tyres and fuel, as I hit the back of the Honda as he exits. So we're near empty fuel tank, and I think I probably need more than half a tank. Yeah, I think that should be enough. I will have to play it conservative initially, but I'm pretty convinced in saying I should have enough fuel to get to the end. I'll just play it conservative for the first 2 laps, and then I think afterwards we can pretty much just go as far as we can go. But I'm pretty convinced in saying with enough fuel conservation, I should have enough to make it to the end. I don't think fuel is really going to be a problem at this stage, because of how far I went on my first tank. I probably would have done maybe 2 more laps, so I might have to stop off just to get a little bit more gas in the tank, but I think I should have enough, as long as I am able to conserve the fuel in the early part of the stint, and then make sure that for the rest of the race I have enough to get to the end. It might be a gamble, but we will see how far the gamble takes us. I reckon it'll probably take us up to about maybe lap 80 or so when we start having fuel issues again, but I don't think that's really going to be an issue at this time, as I now put the Honda S800 9 laps down. So at this point of the race, I'm just trying to focus on saving up as much fuel as I can, so maybe I can make a charge for the end. My fuel might be a little short from the end, but I think on the next stop, if I go to about maybe half a tank, then I think we should be in a strong position. Then I think we should be in a strong position in terms of just getting ourselves to the end. Because as ever, I do want to make sure that my car at least has a shot of getting to the end. As we go through the chicane once again, and up the harbour straight through Tabac. And at this point, we are very much continuing our uncontested domination. As we've now passed the 2-hour mark of this race. So I reckon it's probably going to take us at least another hour and 30 minutes before we're done with this. I reckon this race will be a similar distance to Nürburgring, because I have also established that, well, I know Le Mans is not going to be as long as this or Nürburgring. It'll be a similar length to Opera Paris, but that's also why I will have the racing transmission on again, because I will want to make sure that I am not hitting the rev limiter all the time when I go up the super long Mulsanne straight. I know Mulsanne is going to be very long, because it's the old Mulsanne straight that we're racing on, and not the new one with the chicanes. There is a reason why those chicanes are in place on those Mulsanne straights. They have them there because they are able to basically keep the speeds under control. And I should also mention those chicanes have technically been in place since 1990 at Le Mans, because the organisers feared that with the speeds the Group C cars were travelling at, there would potentially be another catastrophe similar to that of the 1955 disaster. And to those of you who know about the Le Mans disaster of 1955, then you will know that it could have quite literally been what ended motorsport as we know it today. It could have quite literally ended there and then. But amazingly, In spite of it being a disaster that no one in the racing world had ever seen anything like or since, it's amazing to think that they were still racing even after that. And partly the reason for that is because, well, they did ironically start implementing safety changes for spectators as well as drivers. More corners were added over the years to make it so that section of road would be easier to get through than what it was. Under the circumstances, you could say the 24 Hours of Le Mans is very much like the Bathurst 1000 or the Bathurst 12 Hour. You never know when the course is going to bite. And both races have got a ton of history to the point where they know that they've claimed more than their fair share of victims in terms of just quite simply, as I now put the VW, I think that's now the 6th time I've overlapped the VW at this point. And I think the Marcos must now be just up ahead as well, as he is being held up by the Fiat. I think that is actually a battle going on for third between the two cars, or near enough to a battle. And so I overlap the Marcos again, and the Fiat 500 is still continuing to hold up the Marcos. I think the Mini Marcos did lose a bit of time there to the 500 blocking him. And the VW Karmann Ghia is not too far behind him. So we could actually have what is near enough to a battle here, from what I can see. I've gone too deep. Anyway. I think this is where I can start pushing my car again, because I should have enough fuel to realistically make a charge. Although I probably will put in a few more litres, just to make sure that my car does get to the end. I'm pretty much guaranteed to win this race regardless of what happens, because I have such a big lead that no one is really going to contest me for it. As I now put the Alfa Romeo 5 laps down, who I am pretty sure has recently overlapped both the VW and the Marcos up to this point of the event. The two of which are ironically still battling. So this is now the running order after 61 laps. I now have a 5 lap lead over the Alfa Romeo Giulia. Then in third place is the Mini Marcos GT, who is 6 laps behind. The VW Karmann Ghia, I believe, is also 6 laps behind. And then we've got the Honda S800, who is 9 laps down. And then, in 6th and last, 11 laps down at this point of the race now, is the Fiat 500F, who I think at this point is basically just being the field filler. He is not really acting as a racer in this. He's basically just, well, coaxing around here compared to the rest of us. That's pretty much what the case is. But anyway. The Alfa Romeo now comes in for another pit stop. I think this is only his third pit stop of the race, if I'm not mistaken. It's either his third or fourth. I have not been keeping up to date with how many pit stops the AI have made. I know up to this point I have now made precisely 4 pit stops, and next up will be 5. So I reckon it probably is going to be 7 pit stops by the time we're through here. I would consider using the mediums, but I think I'll leave those for the finale. Just as basically a totem to say that I have used all 3 sport tyre compounds. So we pass through the chicane once again, and heading through to back. We are going to have 36 laps to go as soon as we're done with this one. And now we're up to 620 miles. So at this point, there isn't really much to explain in terms of action, but I will say, up to this point of the race, we have very much been out to basically just continue our absolute tear on the competition, which is what I figured this was going to be. As this part of the video has been going on now for 28 minutes. Or this part of the race, I should say. I will definitely be glad by the time we're finished here, because I don't think I can really do another 1,000 mile championship. Although then again, the Formula GT World Championship will technically be over 1,000 miles. Although I don't think that will be my most driven car, because my most driven car will either be at Le Mans, or it will be at the Nürburgring, when I get round to those 24-hour events. But anyway. The easy domination continues, and I am very certain that it's not going to change. So it looks like I'm now going to put the Honda S800 10 laps down. As we head through Saint-Devote, now heading up the hill. As we are now heading towards the Grand Hotel once again. And now heading down into Casino Square. We are 5 laps away after this one from what will be pit stop number 5 of this race. then we'll just have 2 more pit stops to go. And so, we are heading through the tunnel once again, and at this point, and I go too deep into the chicane. I probably knew that was going to happen at some point, but I never could have told you when. I can certainly say you do get a lot of understeer from this car, because I have established that most of the grip goes into the front tyres instead of the rear tyres. Even though I did put in a sports suspension, understeer, I can definitely say, has been a lingering issue that I have managed to just cope with at this point. Because you have to remember, it wasn't until at least the early 80s when power steering really became a thing. And I don't think it was until the mid-80s when power steering was starting to become available in all cars. So this is very much the sort of racing era where you quite literally have to crank the steering wheel about as far as it'll go when it comes to getting the steering camber you're looking for through each of these corners. This is quite literally the era where you practically do have to thrust the steering wheel about as far as it'll go to make certain corners. Of course, the other thing about a lot of racetracks back then is that many of them also used to be held on public roads. And because safety itself during the 60s was still mostly an afterthought before they really started taking it seriously, I would honestly argue the 70s was when safety was starting to become more of a thing. But even then, it was a common occurrence for drivers to still be involved in pretty much those kill or be killed weekends that just seemed to happen a lot of the time back then. It did used to be commonplace for drivers to die quite regularly in race cars of this era. And there is also a reason why they had a lot less horsepower than what most race cars have today. Even though, because they want to make sure that they're staying cost efficient, that is one of the main reasons why these days they have certain BOP regulations that do essentially keep the costs of running a race team and also developing a car as even as humanly possible. As much as a lot of people like to complain about the balance of power regulations that you see in endurance racing today, there's a reason why they have those technical regulations. Because it is the most cost-effective way to make sure that you have a level playing field. Or more or less a level playing field. Because partly the reason why certain eras and regulations constantly change and in some cases evolve is because they're there to make sure that the competition is split as evenly as humanly possible. And that's partly the reason why the LMPH regulations have been as successful as they have been so far. Because they have so much manufacturer involvement with just how many prototypes they are actually running. From, I think it's at least either 6 or 7 different manufacturers that are competing in the Le Mans prototype hybrid regulations. I think that's where it is now. And yes, I should also mention that Aston Martin is also competing in the LMPH regulations as well, with their Valkyrie, which, by the way, yes, is a very cool car, and it gives a sense of identity to say that Aston Martin, unlike other once loved brands, they are still very much fighting to keep a hold of their identity. And that's why a lot of people still appreciate the Aston Martin way, because it's a brand that refuses to give in to the system, and also has a lot of financial backers that know how to make sure the company's reputation does not die. Of course, there aren't any old Aston Martins in this game from this time frame, but if there were, then I would have been interested to see what it would have been like if they would have had either the DB4 or the DB5. Or possibly even the Vantage, as we're now on lap 69. Nice. So we got 2 more laps on what is now stint 5. So we've got at least 2 more stints to make. I reckon we're probably going to do 7 pit stops in this race, because, well, I do also want to make sure that I do end this off with some real-time pace. I know it might be stupid in some cases to go longer on the stint than what I am supposed to with 14 lap stints, but I only do this because I feel like by making less pit stops, I am technically gaining time on if and how I finish this race. And at this point of the race, it looks like I am once again going to pretty much be miles ahead of everyone else. Or in some cases with most of the field, miles and miles ahead. Sure, these laps may look slow, but there is a reason why I do them. So by making less pit stops, I am technically gaining time. At least I think that's how that works. Anyway, 69 nice laps down, and still another 30 to go. As it looks as though we are going to have at least another hour in terms of competing in this race. I might actually go for 1 lap less on my next stop. I think that is genuinely possible. Because if I can go 14 laps on the hards, then I might be able to run 10 laps on the mediums. And then do the last 5 laps on the softs. I think that is one way I could actually gain time later on, if I really wanted to. That's definitely possible. Although I will give myself a little more gas on this stop to make sure that I do get to the end, as my front tyres are once again shot. But I do believe these 14 lap stints are still possible. Even then, if on track it looks like I might be running at a snail's pace, I still feel like at this time I can run long enough to where my pace should just about work. And so here we go. Yeah, I'll get a little more gas, just so I get to the end. That's probably all I need anyway. Okay, I think that should make me good to the end. Because half a tank, I would say with enough fuel conservation that is possible. And that's what I think I'll now do. I'll go conservative on this lap. By short shifting. And then I think I'll do the same for the next lap as well, which will help me gain time as well as preserve my fuel. I am convinced in saying I should have enough to get to the end, but that's also why, with these cars having relatively low RPMs, I should be able to not coast as much. I really couldn't think of the word I was looking for. Of course, I know this would probably never happen in real life because, well, if the revs are too low, then technically cars like these would stall. But because we're not doing this in real life, that is why, at this time, I'm basically conserving fuel. By making sure that I get to the end. And that's also why right now I am currently short shifting. Just so I have enough gas to realistically get to the end. I know I probably have enough fuel anyway, but I just want to make sure of that by making sure that my short shifting does at least leave my cards on the table. Which is technically what I am looking for. So, you know, there is that. So we head through Mirabeau again, in third gear, and down through the Lowe's hairpin. And at this point, it seems like we are keeping ourselves in a good position in terms of our fuel numbers right now. Because I am not downshifting as much as I have been up to this point, this actually is a good way to conserve fuel while still being quick. If you do short shifting and also if you hold your car in place with those gears, then you can actually go quite a long way in terms of your fuel numbers, which is currently what I'm doing. And now I am about to put the VW, I think this is now 7 laps down, if I'm not mistaken. So he now goes 7 laps down, and also the Marcos, I think in just a matter of time, should also go another lap down to me. There was only one point separating the VW and the Marcos heading into this race. I think it was only 9 point... Wait, let me think about this. The VW had 7 points, and the Marcos had 6 points. So technically, he's now currently in the process of getting overlapped by the Alpha again. So I think the VW is now, I think, 8 laps down at this point. Which means the Alpha must be trying to overlap the Marcos again. So the Marcos, I think, is 7 laps down with the VW. And now that he's been overlapped by the Alfa Romeo again... Actually, yeah, I'm pretty sure that does put both of them, I think, either 7 or 8 laps down. I would be willing to guess 7 because the Alpha re-overlapped the Marcos. But if anyone is actually keeping up with the scoreboard at this point, then I would appreciate it if you could actually keep me posted on how many laps ahead I am of the rest of the field. I would appreciate it if anyone out there is keeping track of how many times I have overlapped the AI. Of course, I know there's probably not many people in my neck of the woods who would do that, but if anyone does have the audacity to count how many times I have overlapped the AI at this point of the race, and also for pretty much this whole championship, I guess. If anyone does have tabs on how many times I have overlapped the AI in each of these races, then I would appreciate it if you would give me a full race recap of how many times the AI have been overlapped. So the Fiat 500 is in once again. I think he is now certainly going 12 laps down at this point. Either 12 or 13 laps down. And I think this is where I can start increasing my pace now. Because I think I should have enough pace now to get to the end. I was conservative on my fuel for a bit, as the VW Carmen gear now comes into the pits for what is now his whatever pit stop. I am not really keeping on track with the pit stops at the moment. And that's a wall. But anyway. We'll see how we go. So got some pretty strong pace at the moment. As I now head up the harbour straight into Tabac once again. We're pretty much 3/4 of the way there now in terms of distance. And I think that last mile... Sorry. I think that last 25% of the race is going to pretty much be the same as the other 75%. But anyway, we're 75% of the way there now, so I think up to this point I can start setting my sub 2 minute times again. Which is partly what I am trying to do. But as to how far we get, well, we'll wait and see. And my Jag definitely needs to be washed as soon as we're done with this, because my Jag right now is pretty filthy with all the miles it's done. I think up until we get to the Enduros, this will technically be my most driven car out of all of them. So we're over 2.5 hours into this race now. And it looks like from here, things are pretty much going to continue to pretty much be the way they were before. So I am now putting the Honda S800 10 laps down, as I think the Fiat 500 by this point, from what I can recall, is now either 12 or 13 laps down. I think it's 12. I'm not entirely sure, but I think I'm now 12 laps ahead of the Fiat. And I am still less than an hour into this video. I almost went too deep there on that corner entry, but thankfully I was able to pull up at the last second. And still I continue to understeer into the wall at Sandavot. Probably because I am going a little bit too fast through there. And heading past the Grand Hotel once again, and Casino Square. And at this point, it looks like I don't really need to give a course description anymore. As I am closing in on 650 miles driven, so I think we're going to be close to 700 by the time we're finished here, in terms of miles driven. So we've still got another 20 plus laps to go. And we also have at least another 2 more pit stops to make. As this is now pit stop stint number 6. Yeah, it's my 6th stint of this race now. And so we are now at the actual Monaco Grand Prix final lap, which is 78. Normally it is one of the longest races to finish on the F1 calendar, as we are now 2 hours and 40 minutes into the event. And so here we go. As soon as we get to the end of the next lap, that will pretty much be 20 to go. Which means we will probably have another 40 minutes of driving at least. So I reckon it's probably going to be about 3 hours and 21 minutes as soon as we're done here. Although hopefully Le Mans will not take as long to finish as this one has. But my god. Has this felt like an endurance race? So I think once we get to lap 84, that is when I will do my next stint on the medium tyres, just to see if they'll go 10 laps. And then I will switch over to the soft tyres for the last 4 laps. So the Alfa Romeo is now 6 laps down, with the Mini Marcos currently being 7 laps down. I think the VW is going to officially go 8 laps down now at this point of the race. Doesn't look like that tyre conservation strategy has benefited him as well as it did in Paris, but he is still running in 4th. And by endurance racing standards, he's keeping it marginally close to the Mini Marcos at this point. So, I think it's fair to say between them they technically have had a good race, as I have now hit the 1 hour mark in terms of recording for part 2. And I think these tyres are getting a little bit worn now, as I gain a slipstream from the Marcos. Gain a little bit more speed than I normally would, and again I continue to go too deep. So this is where I now put the Fiat 500. I think this is now 14 laps. I have overlapped the Fiat. It's either 13 or 14 laps now. But because I've done it so often, it's honestly been harder and harder for me to actually recount just how many times I've overlapped the Fiat. I must have done it at least, I would say 40 times now. No wait. I must have done that at least 30 times now, with the amount of times I've overlapped him. I mean, the Fiat practically is just a field filler at this point. There's no question about that. But I guess it depends on whether or not we'll manage to get to the end. With some fuel at hand. I mean, personally, I hope we will, but we'll just have to wait and see how we do from here. I really cannot wait to get off this set of hard tyres. I don't think the grip is really there anymore, as much as I am trying to find it. But anyway, we're 80 laps in, we still have another 19 laps to go. I can definitely say the effort of this does get a bit tiring after a while, but again, I have to try and keep this one going for as long as I possibly can. Once I get to the faster cars, again, these will not feel quite as long for me to work my way through. So I have, I would say, 2 pit stops to go, which technically means I'll make a total of 8 pit stops in this race, which equates to a total of 9 stints. 7 done on the hard tyres, and precisely 2 stints done on both the mediums and the softs. That's basically what my plan is. I am able to do most things, but I can't do everything. Just having a sip from my bottle and understandably hitting the wall. I do have to stay hydrated as much as I can. Of course, vehicle damage does not exist at this point in racing games yet, at least on the GT side of things, because vehicle damage does not become a thing until GT5. But I can certainly say tyre delamination is commonplace around here from what I know. But either way, we are still willing to keep ourselves going. So 2 laps to go on this stint, and then we can basically do 2 more tyre stints from here, as I am heading past what I think is a lifting crane. As we still have another As we still have another 17 to go here at Monaco. So 2 laps to go on what is now stint number 7. And we're closing in on the 3-hour mark. Something that I think we will inevitably hit. But no matter, because for my last 15 laps, I will be on the grippier rubber, providing my medium tyres are able to go 10 laps without completely falling off. So through the tunnel another time. I am pretty sure from here that we are very much in a secured spot in terms of winning. And the understeer still continues to put me in the wall. And I'm actually getting a little tired at this point. But either way, I still feel like I can keep going, so that is what I am doing for now. I can definitely say when I get to the end of these 14 lap stints, these tyres really do feel like they just deserve to be chucked in the bin. Because I have gone that long on these stints. It's pretty much becoming second nature to me at this point that it's clearly the front tyres that take in most of the wear and not the rear tyres. Of course, if I would know Le Mans, then I would say it's probably going to take me at least 5 minutes to do a full lap around Le Mans, if you include the long Mulsanne straight. I think I should just get myself a little more fuel from here when I pit in again, because I have noticed that my fuel meter is down to 3 bars. However, I think we've now got through the slowest part of the race, with me basically just spending the last 84 laps conserving my tyres as much as I can. And so this is where we begin our closing race plan. So mediums, gonna put in a little more gas just to get to the end. That's probably all I need, really. Okay, I think that should be enough. I think that should be enough to cover 15 laps. The fuel numbers may be tight, but I think I can get there with no real issues. Of course, the Monaco pit exit in real life is actually longer and harder to get out of without causing problems these days. Because the pit exit line these days at Monaco is basically at the exit of turn 1, instead of it being at the end of the bus stop straight. I couldn't tell you how long the Monaco pit exit has been there, but I know it's definitely been that way for a number of years at least. As we head through Portier, and through the tunnel we go, as we are closing in on 666 miles driven. And I say that because we will literally have Satan's number once we're done with this lap. Or at one point, it will happen during this lap. So the medium tyres have got more grip. They may wear out faster, but at this point, it's a gamble I'm willing to take because I just want to try and see if I can finish this race going flat out. But we'll see. At this point of the race, we seem to be going pretty well. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens. So this is where I really do pick up my race pace. So 14 laps to go here at Monaco, as I now put the Honda S800 11 laps down. This is where I really start to get on the pace. First of all, because I want to, and also because, well, I just really want to get this race over and done with, so then I can just refocus my plans on getting around Circuit de la Sarthe, which is where we will end it. Because I have more grip, you can obviously tell that my car is faster. And I honestly feel a lot easier just trying to get to the end of the race on the grippier compounds than I do on the durable compounds. Because otherwise, if I was staying durable, then this race overall would be pretty boring. Or at least for me, the race would be pretty boring because I wouldn't be willing to change it up, and... Oh, I missed the Satan lap. Oh well. I go less than a second up on my previous best lap time. And I think at this point, this stint is very much going to be my second to last. As you can tell, my pace is already quicker, so I think it's fair to say that we've definitely cranked up the pace. I think I am probably going to win this race by, I think 7 laps, maybe 8. The way things are going at the moment. It's probably more likely to be 7 laps. Unless my soft tyre stint proves to be about as fast as it'll go. But we'll wait and see. As I am closing in on the 670 mark and overlapping the Alpha, had to force him into the wall to get him out of the way, but I have now put him 7 laps down. So there's a good possibility that this ends as a fucking 8-lap victory over the Alfa Romeo, as we are now at the 3-hour mark of this race. And as you would have expected, I am very much miles ahead of everyone else. I think that probably would have been a purple lap time if that Alfa Romeo didn't get in my way. And so, I now put the Fiat 500 14 laps down. So I think that means at this point he's got to be, I would say, 3 laps behind the Honda S800, if I recall correctly. So to this point of the race now, with less than 12 to go, I now have a 7-lap lead over the Alfa Romeo Giulia. Then in third place, I am precisely 9 laps ahead, I think, of both the Mini Marcos and the VW. Then 11 laps ahead of the Honda S800, unless it's 12. And precisely 14 laps ahead of the Fiat 500. Although, because there's no leaderboard that shows itself, it's hard to tell for sure over which lap exactly the AI is on in comparison to me. Aside from them pretty much being miles behind me, to say the least. And I set a 1 minute 56 point Satan. I think these tyres at this point are probably past their best, so I don't really know if I'm actually going to be fast enough to really get after. So I don't really know if I am going to be fast enough to beat my previous best time. But then again, that's why I also have the soft compound tyres. So if I decide I want to put in some hot laps, then I can basically put in the hot laps. And doing so while putting in minimal tuning as well. So yeah, there is that. I might have used a little bit too much brake there, but I think I was okay with that one. As I head through to back once again, and the swimming pool section. And at this point of the race, my pace continues to be Trebissimo. And what's my next best lap time going to be? A 1 minute 55.6. So I think it goes to show that my tyres still have some rubber left in them. So the Alfa Romeo, I think at this point, is now 2 laps ahead of both the VW and the Mini Marcos at this point. And just keeping it held in tightly. And through Lowe's hairpin we go. And now we just have to make sure that we continue. So I now have a 9 lap lead over the Volkswagen, and now I am about to go 9 laps up on the Marcos as well. Up to this point of the race. So I still have another 4 laps to do on this stint, and then for, I would say, the last 5 laps, we can pretty much go on the grippy soft compound tyres, which is precisely how I want to do things. And so we have 9 laps to go now here at Monaco. The race order is pretty much well and truly decided at this point. I don't need any more fuel. I am pretty confident in saying that I will get to the end with no real problems. Aside from putting in a few more gallons just in case. But either way, we are still continuing to fight on. And so here we are. As we now head through the tunnel corner once again. I have a 7 lap lead over the Alfa Romeo. Then it is a 9 lap lead over both the Mini Marcos and the Volkswagen Carmen Gear. Don't know why I struggled to get that out, but whatever. Then it is the Honda S800, who is currently 11 laps down, and looking to probably go 12 laps down by the time we're finished here. And then at the back it will probably be the Fiat 500, who probably ends up going 15 laps down. If my memory serves me correctly. So 2 more laps to do on this stint. I think I should have enough durability in the tyres to go just a bit longer. I also wouldn't be surprised if the tyre wear on the mediums is actually quite similar to that of the tyre wear on the hards. But then again, I went with the hards because I figured, well, durable tyres, they take the longest to wear, but that's actually not the case with this one. I think the medium tyres actually have similar levels of tyre wear to what the hard tyres do. As in, they have similar levels of wear and tear that what the hard tyres can go through. So the Honda S800 is now 12 laps down, as we are almost 3 hours and 10 minutes into what is race 3 of the 1000 miles tour. And this, I can confidently say, is going to be near enough to 1000 miles. We're probably going to be less than 700 miles by the time we're done here. As my front tyres are getting more bits of wear and tear. And still managing to set a sub 2 minute time. Even then, if the understeer does continue to plague me. But that's fine, because we only have another 7 laps to go. As I hit the wall again. Very easy to do around Monaco. Because although Monaco in the GT series is wider than it is in real life, you would be amazed on how easy it is to actually hit the walls around here at Monaco. It seems pretty much inevitable that every time you race around Monaco, there is going to be at least one point where you will inevitably hit the outside walls because the track is so tight. And that is now precisely 15 times I have overlapped the Fiat. And I don't think that's going to be the last time either. So the Alfa Romeo comes in, most likely for fuel and tyres, and I'm really not doing a good job of stopping myself from hitting the wall at the moment. Although it might also be because I am pretty tired. But I don't have much further to go. And so, I think that's probably the final pit stop the Alfa Romeo is going to make up to this point. My fuel numbers may be tight, but I think I can get there, as that is the first time I have set on this set of medium tyres, aside from the outlap of course, where I have ultimately set a 2 minute time. So this is where I will make my last pit stop. As for the final 5 laps, I will pretty much have all the grip in the world. And I will probably put the Alfa Romeo, once my tyres get warmed up, precisely eight laps down. I think that's right. Anyway. Still got another 10 minutes of racing at least, the way things are looking now. But since I have a bit more grip on my medium tyres compared to my hard tyres, it is making it a little bit easier to get through these corners. So this is the lap where I pit, because I need a new set of boots if I am going to reach the end. So really keeping it tight on the corner, sorry, the pit entry. Don't need any more fuel, just need soft tyres, and that's it. I should have more than enough fuel to get to the end now. My fuel numbers may be tight, but I think they are in my favour for these last 5 laps. And so now we can pretty much go and basically be as fast as fuck for this final stint. Tyres will be cold briefly, but they'll quickly warm up, because grippier tyres normally do warm up faster. I have set my fair share of sub 2 minute times, or basically a handful of sub 2 minute times throughout the course of this race. But as soon as I am done here, I really cannot wait to call it a day. Because that is just how long these races take to do on a day-to-day basis. But then again, I only do these races because I really want to get the replays recorded, so it gives me something else to do aside from walking on my upcoming 2-week holiday. So you know, there is that. But either way, here we are now for what should be our final stint of this race. Basically setting 4 hot laps around Monaco. And no one is going to be in front of me again, so it looks like I am going to win this by 8 laps. So, after 95 laps, I now have an 8 lap lead over the Alfa Romeo Giulia. Then in 3rd place we have the Mini Marcos, who I believe is now 10 laps down, along with the VW Carmen Gear, who is also 10 laps down. Both have been overlapped by the Alfa twice, in 3rd and 4th. Then in 5th, it's the Honda S800, who is now, I think, 12 laps down. And at the back is the Fiat 500, precisely 15 laps down. I hope I did my counting right. And if I didn't, then well, it's fine. Point is, I am much happier with a... Point is, I am much happier to finish these races with a grippier car than I am a stiff car. Technically speaking, of course. So, gonna go purple again. What's it gonna be this time? a 1 minute 54.9. That is now another new personal best. And so, I think for this one, I might as well try and see if I can go purple again. Because I have the grippier rubber, and also because I feel like I can do that. If you are still watching at this point, then I will definitely give you credit, because you have actually made it up to the end of what has been the third of 4 long, drawn-out races that are pretty much a precursor to the endurance events that we'll do later on in the game. And I think at this point we are very much at the point of saying that we clearly dominated by choosing the Jag, as we are now up to 690 miles driven. Nice. And up to this point, I can probably set one more quick lap, and then I think that'll do it. I think had I not hit the wall at the harbour chicane, I probably would have gone faster. But now I just have to make sure that I don't do that. Just in an effort to try and see if I can go faster. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do here. Because I have a lot more grip on this set of boots compared to the others. Typically when you have a grippy tyre, you also have a fast tyre. And that's kind of what the case is with me. So I think we've got one more opponent left to lap. Although it could very well be 2, depending on how quick my pace is. I think I went a little bit too deep through there, and it's the VW once again. So I think I'm going to put the VW, I would say 11 laps down, from what I can see. So how good is this lap going to be? It's going to be a 1 minute 55 flat. Well, we are now on the final lap of the Monaco 1000 mile race. And once we're done here, we will have driven precisely, I think, 695 miles. So I think what that means is the last race will probably be 300 miles, or near enough to 300 miles. I think when I had a look on the GT fandom, the most laps we ran in... I think when I looked at the GT fandom, the most theoretical miles you can do for these 4 races is about 996 miles, so I think we're in a good spot. And what do you know? It is the Fiat I have to overlap one more time. Well, might as well get it over with. So the VW and the Mini Marcos are now 11 laps down, with the Fiat being 16 laps down. And that is how this race is going to end. And I think I just scraped the wall there, but I should be able to get away with it. And a 1:54.9 is my best lap time, as I finished the race with a 1:57.1. Oh, 15 laps. Okay. And I finished 10 laps ahead of the Marcos. And right before the end, the VW has to pit. So I win in the end by 8 laps over the Alfa Romeo Giulia. Then the Mini Marcos finishes, and we have once again got a tie for third, but this time it's the Marcos who is in favour over the VW. And the rest of the field, well, they're just the rest of the field basically. And yes, I did also turn off the replay music again if you're asking. Sorry if I didn't mention that before. But we've got another 150,000, and we're up to 844 grand. So these are your standings after 3 rounds of the 1000 miles championship. I now have a 12-point lead over the Alfa Romeo Giulia, and this time it is the Mini Marcos who is in favour of third place over the VW Carmen Gear Coupe. So I won in the end by 8 laps over the Alfa Romeo, then the Mini Marcos was third, precisely 10 laps down, with the VW also being 10 laps down. Then it was the Honda S800 who finished precisely 12 laps down, and then at the back, as you saw, it was the Fiat 500 who finished 15 laps down, as you actually saw at the end, surprisingly. But anyway, there we go. So 3 races down, still 1 to go. My god, do these races get tiring. But anyway, there we go. So, 1 race to go, and that is at Circuit de la Sarthe. And that is where we will be heading next time on Gran Turismo 4. I might as well do that now, just to basically give you a precursor to the finale. So, next time on Gran Turismo 4, 1000 miles finale.